Hello, I'm Caroline Fairchild, and welcome to LinkedIn News Live, where the business conversation begins with you. Female Founders Fund recently closed its third round of fundraising to the tune of $57 million. That brings its assets under management to more than $95 million, and all those investment dollars will go to women. It's much needed. Women received just 2.2% of total US VC money in 2020, and the number is even lower for women of color. Joining me now to discuss is Female Founders Fund's founding partner, Anu Duggal. Anu started Female Founders Fund in 2014. She's been at the head of several startups, including Dunya and exclusively .in. She got her undergrad degree from Vassar and her MBA from the London Business School. Anu, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Thanks so much for having me, Caroline.
And I'm so excited to also say that joining us in this discussion is Kate Ryder. She's the founder and CEO of Maven. She's been at the head of Maven for over 7 years and was an early stage investor at Index Ventures after a career in business journalism, girl after my own heart. She got her undergrad from University of Michigan and her master's from the London School of Economics and Political Science. Kate, welcome to LinkedIn News Live.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, and I'll start with you. This fund was oversubscribed during a global pandemic, no less. Talk to us about where the interest is coming from and how this came together.
Sure. So I have to admit, when we first started the fundraising process, I was very nervous. The thought of raising this fund without meeting anyone in person, combined with the impact of the pandemic and the fact that there was a certain amount of uncertainty as it related to kind of the future, particularly around startups and technology. And so I was very surprised and excited by the level of enthusiasm that we got particularly from our newer institutional investors.
And that enthusiasm is coming from some great places. A lot of the press coverage had to do with the partnership with Melinda Gates, which is not new. Melinda Gates has been a partner with Female Founders Fund for quite some time. What's the interest there? How did that relationship start?
Sure. So I would say, Melinda has definitely been somewhat forward thinking as it relates to addressing the inequity, particularly from a gender perspective in tech and startups and venture capital. And I believe it was several years ago that she came out publicly stating that, whether it's funding female fund managers, funding female entrepreneurs, she was allocating a very large sum of capital towards addressing that issue. And I think timing wise, we ended up building a relationship with her team, and they invested both in Fund 2 as well as in Fund 3.
And Kate, I'll bring you into the conversation now. Maven is a fertility startup that you launched in 2014. Take us back to then. I think that we're in a very different place in the conversation right now when it comes to funding things like fertility startups. But what was the fundraising process like for you back in 2014?
Well, I still have PTSD from the fundraising process. It was brutal. I mean, we actually started in London. And so we raised a small kind of friends and family round in London, knowing that we were going to move to the US. And so when I was landing in New York, I got an introduction to Anu, and a lot of the American investors at the time were kind of like, "Oh, women's health, it's a niche market. Is this really a big business?" And Anu got it right away. She was one of our first American investors, and has now been a board observer ever since, and helped scale this business. So grateful, because it really did take kind of a female investor and a visionary like Anu to really kind of see our market early.
Well, Kate, this term niche market, I feel like I hear about that a lot from female founders. Is it really though a niche market, or is it just niche to the investors that you were speaking to at the time?
Well, it's one of those things where if you just look at the numbers, healthcare is about almost 20% of the GDP, many trillions of dollars, and women control 80% of the decisions and how the dollars flow through the industry, which means you have a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity if you just actually engage this core customer of healthcare. So yeah, I mean, that to me isn't niche. Maybe it's niche to some people, but it's a pretty big market, I think.
It's a huge market, and of course, Anu saw the opportunity there. I'm going to go ahead and say hello to some members who are joining us in the stream right now. We have Anna from Romania, Hannah from Texas, Tina from Colorado, and Paula from North Carolina. And if you're just joining us here on LinkedIn News Live, we're having a conversation about the future of female entrepreneurship, the future of female funding. We're having a conversation about that with Kate Ryder from Maven, as well as Duggal from the Female Founders Fund. So if you have questions for them, let us know in the stream and we'll get them answered on the show.
I was just going to say, I wanted to add on to Kate's answer. I think, when you look at the vision that Kate had back, 2014, 2013, women's healthcare wasn't even a category for venture investors. And if you fast forward to where we are today, there has been, rightly so, a huge leap in terms of the amount of funding, whether it's in fertility companies, maternity, childcare, parenting. And so, I give her a ton of credit for identifying that opportunity and having the grit and resilience to continue effectively paving the way for so many of these other players that have been able to really leverage, what Maven's success to really kind of build upon, where we are today.
And Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Maven just on some list of one of the best places to work? So you're doing something right.
Yeah, the second year in a row. So that's been really great to get those accolades. But yeah, and building on Anu, I feel so grateful. Not only did she see it as well, but then it was still very difficult to raise our Series A. The market had not really come around yet. It was only until the Series B that we raised, which was led by Sequoia and Oak, that really, truly, it felt like there were theses in venture capital. But Anu, after the 25th rejection that we got for our Series A, it was like, this business is not going to fail. And she ended up introducing us to our Series A investor, who was a pregnant woman who also saw the need.
Well, Kate, that difficulty that you're describing just has a lot to do with just the lack of capital still going to female founders. That number actually decreased in 2020. Pulling up some numbers here that continue to astonish me. We had a record year in 2020 of 156 billion in venture investment, but only 3.2 billion of that went to sole female founders. What's going on here? Are these the same issues that you and I have been discussing for the past half decade, or are there new ones cropping up that we need to discuss?
So I think, to answer your question fairly, I don't see that things have changed that dramatically at a macro level. But, at Female Founders Fund, we're obviously investing in the future. And I always think it's important to highlight that there are some, examples of success that I think are not only inspirational for potential female founders, but also to investors demonstrating the true ROI that they're missing out on. So, in the first half of this year, you had Bumble go public, 23andMe go public, Figs go public, all female founded companies. And I think, what we track on an annual basis is actually looking at the number of Series A rounds that are getting done by female founders, or Series B rounds. And, those numbers are going up pretty significantly over time. And I think it's going to take, it takes a few years to go from a Series A to, $150 million Series D, or, raising those billions that we need to see. So, I completely agree. We have a very long way to go, but at the same time, to have 3 IPOs led by female founded businesses in the first 6 months of the year, that has never happened. So, so I do think that there are some bright lights amidst, the numbers that you just shared.
Right. And I was actually just speaking with Pam Koska over at All Raise last week, and I was talking to her about this and about Series A's in particular. And she says that the biggest hurdle that she's seen a lot of founders face is getting from that seed or that friends and family round to Series A, which is why All Raise is so focused in that area. Kate, was that a big jump for you in terms of the fundraising process? And from what you're hearing on the ground now, is it getting easier for founders, whether they're women or not?
Yeah, it's still, the market changes so much in terms of what a Series A investor is looking for. So, are they looking for revenue growth, or are they looking for user growth? Do they want to just kind of make a bet on a team and a TAM? So the Series A is still so much about the vision that I think one of the things that Anu really helped me with is kind of teach me that we were still very much selling the vision. And so to get out of the like day-to-day metrics a little bit, because as a seed stage company, I mean, most of them, they're still so early. It's tough to tell on the metrics alone, and really talk about the vision. I think that the female founders that still kind of struggle, and again, we face this as well, is sometimes, female founders are operating in markets that have the female consumer that the male investor might not understand the unique problem they're solving. And so when they're selling the vision, this is not an electric car story or a SaaS business that, you've seen that story kind of done it 100 times over. It could be kind of a new business in beauty or a new type of e-commerce. And so that's why I think that there is sometimes that gap, and why it is so difficult for female founders to rise above, to the Series A. And I think about some of the new successful companies like Sean from Zola. Zola's a wedding business. She helped me raise our Series A. She struggled a lot. It's a huge category. She's an amazing founder. So I think that there's an example where just people didn't totally get it, but it's an awesome business opportunity.
And just to follow on to that, Caroline, from the vantage point of a potential Series A or Series B investor, you're really only making 2, maybe 3 bets a year, and you are committing to effectively signing up for at least 5 to 10 years of participation and really supporting these companies, through their next phases of growth. And so, as an investor, you have to not only be excited about the business, the founder, but I think to a certain degree also have a personal level of interest in the space. And so I think what Kate is kind of mentioning is that, if you are looking at, an investor base that's, primarily male, are they going to get excited about a wedding business, a beauty business, fertility business? Maybe some will, but it's an added challenge, which, I think you have to factor into the fundraising journey.
And that's, some of the brilliance behind your investment thesis over at Female Founders Fund. You're investing in those gaps that Kate just highlighted in her previous answer. Talk to us a little bit about where Female Founders Fund is investing, what pillars you're looking for. But Anu, I also just wanted to get your take on this estimate from Pivotal Ventures last week that the care economy is estimated to be upwards of $648 billion. Is that something that Female Founders Fund is looking for? Are there entrepreneurs out there who are looking to meet this demand that we're seeing for care services?
Yeah, so I think Pivotal did an amazing job on really putting numbers behind the market opportunity. And to Kate's point, I think investors only react and get excited when they truly understand the TAM of a market and why it makes sense from an ROI point of view. I think for us, kind of looking at this new fund, there are a couple of key areas that we're excited about. So digital health, we've invested in obviously Maven, Real, Tempest, ULA Clinic. So really are passionate about what we call the consumerization of digital health. So businesses that are putting the customer first, which I think has only started to happen, called in the last 5 to 6 years. And I think the pandemic has also kind of shed a light on the fact that we need to do a better job across the board in the healthcare arena. A couple other areas, so workplace efficiency tools, I think we're all zoomed out to a certain degree. And as we look at these hybrid models of return to work versus work from home, entrepreneurs that are building platforms and tools that make this a more seamless experience. And then I would say the creator economy, and the fact that, you have so many entrepreneurs or solopreneurs who have started to build businesses at home, and what are the tools and the products that service them. And then I would say, climate change, we all know we're way overdue on really investing behind entrepreneurs, building products and solutions that target that.
Mm-hmm. And Kate, so much of what Anu was just talking about the conversation around it has been changed amid the pandemic. I'm curious from your seat, has the pandemic shifted at all how companies are thinking about fertility benefits, making fertility more a part of the core healthcare offerings that they're offering, say, their employees, or just how investors are thinking about it, quite candidly? Yeah,
I mean, that's been one of the big silver linings of COVID is I think there was a question maybe a few years ago about whether is fertility and women's health a nice to have benefit or a must have, and is it a core part of the healthcare experience? And the answer that the market has resoundingly said is yes. We're seeing a ton of fertility deals coming back. I think you can look at, the market right now. Progyny is the public company in fertility. That their market has come back after COVID. And I think fundamentally what we've seen for us is, we also have maternity, parenting, and pediatrics, and this concept of the family home and how to support, the family. It goes into a little bit the care economy, because after you have a baby, obviously childcare becomes a huge factor in kind of supporting your needs as a working parent. That is very much top of mind for all the employers. So it's really that notion of from fertility all the way through those early childhood years and how to support. Particularly because with all of the virtual schooling and burnout that the parents face during COVID, it's the whole spectrum that we see employers facing and focusing on.
Well, it's great to hear that employers are at least moving in the right direction in that facet of what the future of work is going to look like. Another just gross inequity that the pandemic exposed was just racial inequity across the board. And of course, while things are still pretty dire for female founders of color are continuing to just get smaller check sizes. I want to walk through some of these numbers for those who are joining us in the stream. I mean, there's just a gross inequity here in terms of the national medium seed round and what Black women and what Latinx women are receiving. How do we get these check sizes to be closer in amount? And is this the same issue in terms of investors not realizing the total TAM that these founders are trying to address with their companies?
So there are a couple ways to answer that question. I believe there was a study that came out last week that was looking at year over year, the amount of funding that went towards Black and Latinx women. And I think, we have a long way to go, but again, there was a pretty significant jump. And I think part of that was probably due to, the social justice movement of last year. We have definitely seen, a lot of new managers come into the market with funds that are specifically focused on the people of color community. And so I think, this movement has just really gotten off the ground. And I actually feel very optimistic that things are moving in the right direction, even amongst the LPs, that we were in conversations with over the past 18 months. The awareness and the recognition that this is an area that needs attention was much more so than, call it the last 7 to 8 years.
Well, it's definitely an area that needs attention. I'm sure you've also just seen the stats around how many women of color are starting their own businesses during this time. And that gets to a question that I'm seeing in the stream right now from Samantha. She's saying Black women are leading entrepreneurship right now, but are having a hard time maintaining and growing their businesses. Is business education in the future for female founders fun? So how do you work with your portfolio companies to ensure that they're growing, that they're scaling?
Yeah, so in terms of business education, we actually relaunched our website last year and created a portal full of educational resources, everything from marketing, running your board efficiently, hiring, recruiting, all of those. We've compiled resources across different funds and different educational sources, so that we always direct entrepreneurs to that platform because I think it can be very educational.
And speaking of those opportunities, Kate, back in 2014 when you started Maven, investors were saying this is a niche market. What are those quote unquote niche markets today that you see a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs, for those who may be joining us in this stream and may want to start their own business or launch their own venture?
Yeah, I mean, I would just look at, I think that the total addressable market is so critical as you think about starting a business. And so I would just look at where's the dominant female consumer. Healthcare is a huge area, retail is another, where you can create a product that's filling a gap, right? Healthcare, I mean, I'm obviously pretty biased. I think healthcare is going through a massive disruption right now, particularly post-COVID, but already was going through that beforehand with the ACA and all of the changes going on there, as well as just big tech players jumping into it. So there's just a lot of really exciting opportunity in healthcare for digital entrepreneurs that are excited to make a change there. And then again, I think, the other piece of advice I'd give is just, one of the great things I think about Maven is I really understand the patient journey. I'm a mother of 3. And so, if you can find something that you really know well and that you can, build a product for and build a marketing plan and evangelize, that's another area where, you specifically as a female entrepreneur are at a competitive advantage, just knowing the user.
Kate, a mother of 3, I think it's a baby miracle, no pun intended, that we haven't heard any of those children during our broadcast. So I don't know where you put them, but
you did hear my brother, but not my children. So.
I have another question in the stream that I want to get to. This one is from Kunal, and they're asking, how can these women get in front of more VCs to grow and have their visions come to fruition? Anu, I'm actually going to flip the question. Are more VCs understanding the importance of investing in these markets that, quite frankly, only female founders can really understand and grow businesses by? Are you seeing the conversation change outside of the Female Founders Fund community?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, going back to 2013 or 14, looking at, Sandhill Road and some of the top tier funds that, we all are aware of, none of them had female partners, or, maybe only several of them did. And I think looking across the board now, whether it's Sequoia, Excel, Lightspeed, all of these funds have one, if not more, female partners on their teams. And I think they've recognized that, these women are offering a different perspective, and they are going to attract different types of deal flow and diverse deal flow, and, really be able to tap into opportunities that, quite frankly, a group of, young or old white men may not necessarily have within their networks.
Right. And Kate, from your time at Index, I'm sure you know that the VC industry is filled with young and old white men, and this can't just be on the female partners at these firms to make these investments. Are you hearing from your founder community that the conversations within these boardrooms are changing, that say maybe the questions that female founders were being asked that you would cringe, they were asked like 10 years ago, are those still being asked, or are the conversations in these boardrooms really changing?
I think the answer is there. It's changing. There's more female investors. There's more female analysts. That female analysts, particularly our experiences during our A, B, and C, there may have been no female partners, but the female analysts would really kind of go to bat for us. A lot of times we would get, oh, my wife, I don't know if my wife would use this, so I don't know if it's a good business. And the female analysts would kind of whip out 5 other examples of females who would use our product. And then, and others, I still at our Series C, had some cringeworthy moments on, investor meetings. So I think it's a mixed bag still, but definitely, I mean, I'm an optimistic entrepreneur. There is progress. So it's really good to focus on that progress, and just our own story. We have been lifted up, and I personally benefit so much from an incredible board of female investors. I am mentored by female operators. I mean, this Maven is a story of amazing, really senior female business leaders helping lift us up. So we definitely would not be here if things weren't changing.
And Anu, you've been beating that drum of support and progress that Kate was just mentioning for several years now. Congrats again on this nearly $100 million in assets under management 7 years into this. Before I let you go, how can we create more funds like this? What needs to change so that more people are stepping up and addressing the inequities that are in the industry, so that 10 years from now, hopefully you and I aren't sitting down having the same conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. The way that this kind of ecosystem works is really, the folks at the top are the limited partners, and they are really the ones that drive the decisions around who gets funded, from a fund manager perspective. And I think slowly but surely, we are starting to see signs that, some of these endowments, foundations, fund of funds are recognizing that it's actually their responsibility to put this on the agenda as they look at, who have they already invested in, who are those fund managers investing in, is diversity important for them, as well as, what is the demographics across their portfolio of fund managers. And so I think that this issue is coming up, but I think they are truly the ones that are going to drive change from the top.
Well, I know I speak for the stream when I say, Kate and Anu, thank you so much for your leadership in this area and for sharing these insights on LinkedIn News Live. Seen so many people say, great discussion. I saw some entrepreneurs, Anu, saying they're going to start knocking on your door. They have business ideas they want your take on. So I'm sure we'll continue this conversation. And thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That was Anu Duggal from Female Founders Fund, as well as Kate Ryder from Maven, breaking down Female Founders Fund's latest round of funding and what this means for the future of female entrepreneurship. I want to thank them for joining us on the show. We're seeing a great discussion in the comments. So if you want to continue that conversation, be sure to check out the news module to the right of your LinkedIn feed. Or if you're in mobile, you can click into that search box. All right, tomorrow, my colleague Andrew Seaman will be with you at 11 Eastern with his show, Get Hired Live. He'll be speaking with Leslie Garr about how to be a great resume writer. I'm Caroline Fairchild. Thanks for joining us on LinkedIn News Live.